Hello, friends. We are in a troubling time when it comes to misinformation. Here at Forbidden Knowledge News, I've always taken an unbiased, open-minded, and responsible approach to presenting my own theories, and the views of our guests do not reflect that of my own. This show is for entertainment purposes only, and any information presented during this show is a live-action role-play scenario. Conspiracies are definitely fun to discuss in a responsible way. All that being said, enjoy this episode. Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Raven Keefer. First, check out Brainsupreme. Brainsupreme contains the highest quality ingredients so you can start your microdosing journey. You can get 15% off your entire order when you visit their website, brainsupreme.co/discount/FKN15. And we also have a link for you right in the description. Also, be sure to check out the Forbidden documentary, Occult Louisiana, available on Tubi, Roku channel, and multiple streaming platforms. We're booking guests for January. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me, forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today, I want to welcome back to the show Raven Keefer. He is a researcher. He is also an expose writer from mid-1980s through today. He currently has 23 books in print and has been a lifetime researcher that contributes to numerous content creators and independent reporters. Raven, welcome back. How you doing?
I am doing fantastic, and folks, he and I were talking for a few minutes, so we're not going to lie to you about that. But no, man, it is good to hear from you.
Yes, man. It is great to have you back. It's been a little while. Looking forward to discussing whatever comes up today. You and I always have a great conversation. We hadn't really planned for this, but there's so much going on that we can jump into. And you were talking to me about some of the things you've been looking into, UFO hearing, and mainly how people can get their own houses in order. I think that's really important right now. I'd also like to get your insights into where we're at collectively, some of the events that just unfolded, and what that could mean for us heading into the future. Before we get into any of that, though, it's been a little while. Just remind the audience a little bit about yourself and let them know where they can find you.
Well, folks, I'm a writer for decades. 23 books in print. I've got 2 masters and a doctorate and a few bachelor's degrees, and none of that stuff matters. You can find my main podcasts at Spreaker. That's my homepage, Spreaker.com. However, if you just type in Raven Keefer, I'm on about 65 repeater sites, so you can pretty much listen to me wherever you like to listen to podcasts.
How do you feel about the overall state we've been in, especially since we talked? We had the major selection, which you know how I feel about it. I know how you feel about it.
Oh, yeah.
Bunch of theater. But how do you feel about where we're at?
Well, it's you and I kind of look at things the same way. You got 2 sides of the same rotten carcass.
Yes.
2 wings of the same rotting bird. But here's the thing that I look at it. I look at it as good cop, bad cop. There was a flip from George Bush to Bill Clinton. There was a handoff, and your neocons, the hardliners, became Democrats. You still had the neocons, or what they call rhinos, within the Republican Party, but the Democrats became the hammers. From Clinton onward, they basically were, Clinton and Bush, same group.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize Bill Clinton is in the Rothschild bloodline. A lot of people didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
And Hillary Clinton is in the Rockefeller bloodline. And folks, if I got those reversed, I apologize. It's early for me over here. It's even earlier for poor Chris. But the thing about it is like you got good cop and bad cop. Since the Bush era, Bush won, folks. Bush won. Clinton and that bunch have been hardliners for globalism, and they have hammered stuff home, like Bush and Clinton put in NAFTA, not another effing thing, America, and then CAFTA, and so they've been hammering all the globalist stuff in through the Democrats. But you always had the rhinos in the background, and they're like Lenin. Okay. Their ideologies and the way that they want to do things is, good example is Kamala Harris. She said, it's really funny because with a stroke of a pen, I can have somebody put in prison. Yeah. It's that kind of attitude. Well, on the other side of the fence, we have the Trumpsters. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about the people who follow him. I'm talking about that particular group of individuals. Right. They're supposed to be the good cops. What they're going to do is they're going to slow play it. They still want digital ID. They still want global currency. They still want digital currency. So it's just, okay, we're either going to force you to do it or we're going to very politely force you to do it. It's still the same process.
Yeah, 100%. And the way I've seen it is as the pendulum swang back and forth over the past few decades, the collective has been essentially molded in certain ways by the ideologies that they were either forced to accept or push against. And this has led to where we're at now, I believe. The past administration, especially under Joe Biden, with the destruction of our economy and the inflation and everything we've seen, this has created a bigger following for Trump. They're playing their roles. It puts this emotional state out there for people who are not supporting the other side to where they're pushed to vote for the lesser of two evils or the one that they feel is going to save the country. And Trump has been propped up as this savior figure, especially for this last campaign. There's a lot of theological implications that crept into the election. Trump survived supposedly 2 assassination attempts, which, we can get into the high strangeness behind all of that. But it seems like we have been steered by intelligent script writing, something that seems to have been planned for a very, very long time. I don't know what's going to come out of this, but it feels in my gut like a trap. It feels like those that have been led to think that Trump is a savior figure have been led into this massive trap where what is going to unfold is more surveillance, more control, and it's just going to be under the guise of something different. And then all of a sudden we have all these world leaders that are backing Trump, some that completely hated him before and now are just willing to work with him on anything and everything. I heard, Marina Abramovich, that Hollywood witch.
Yeah.
I heard an interview where she was saying Trump was the best thing to happen to this country. He's the grand magician. I know Trump has a background in Kabbalah studies, and a lot of people don't know that. He's claiming to be this Christian right now. In a speech, he said, Christians, come out to vote, because if Christians, you come out to vote this time, you will never have to vote again. We're going to take care of everything. You won't even have to vote again after this. It's like, what the fuck does that mean? So there's some very interesting things that are unfolding, and it concerns me that it may be some sort of trap, like I said.
Abramovich was right though. When you think about magic, folks, a lot of people don't. You've got the illusionists. Illusionists are fantastic. They distract you on one side while they're doing something else. Chris Angel, one of my favorite people, really nice guy. He's a fantastic illusionist. He has you looking everywhere but where the actual trick is at. A lot of times that involves sliding down into a set of stairs that you would never imagine. And the stairs are moved away. When the stairs are moved away, guess where he's at? Wherever the stairs went. That's one of those inside tricks, y'all, for illusions. But anyway, so here's the thing. Trump is a very, very good magician. Magic, magic is defined as using science and the arts in order to make or bend people to your will. Now you think about this. The art. Well, Trump is an actor.
Yeah, 100%.
He's also a businessman. There's an art to being a businessman, right? Well, that is the one side of it. Then you use the science or the technology. Television, neurolinguistics, that's a science. Presentation is art also. So you put up all these images and everything's done in a certain way. So what happens is it literally uses the art of presentation, whatever that might be, with the science and technology, television, streaming, neurolinguistics, those kind of things.
Yeah.
And Trump is the ultimate magician. You look at what he managed to do. He got 180,000 Amish to vote.
Yeah.
That is magic.
He's also been playing to the, like I said, Christians, but also people who are in the truther conspiracy community. I think RFK was a great example of pandering to some of the people in that alternative space. It seems like it's all part of a bigger plan to lull us into submission because we believe he's going to save us all.
Well, let's go back to daggone it, his name just went right out of my head, but it's in a letter in a speech from 1870s. When the people demand a hero, we will provide one for them. Albert Pike. There you go. And the reason why I say that is just because throughout history, if you look the last 100 years, when things were so tense and so serious, like, even JFK is a very good example. People were so frustrated and angry in the 1950s because of the things that had been going on, including a lot of globalist things. You can say whatever you want about Eisenhower and Truman, but look at what they actually did. And then the socialist Democrats from the 40s, installing all these, basically communist principles in the country. Kennedy was a hero that people needed at the time. So they provided him.
Yeah.
And I'm not, folks, your opinion of Kennedy makes no difference to me. I'm just pointing out that he was put in place at a time when people were demanding change. Of course, look what happened. Nothing.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm not going to claim to have any real knowledge or foresight of what could be possibly happening. I don't have any whistleblowers whispering in my ear about any of this information. I just go off of what I feel in my gut and my observations, and I can step back and look at a bigger picture of how everything's unfolded and have no emotional attachment to either side of the clown show. So it's easier for me to look at it objectively and say, there's something fundamentally wrong with everything that we have been presented.
Well, and I also need to point out to folks, if you've never heard my podcast, I did a lot of Aramon and Dajjal podcasts back in my early years. And the Dajjal has an army that aren't human, and their faces are just flat surfaces. I would invite you to look at Elon Musk's robots.
Oh, yeah, I was watching one today, this earlier.
I'm just pointing this out to you all. The Dajjal would come from an island. Well, where is Trump's family from?
Hmm.
I want to point this out. They're from an island in north of England. The second thing I would point out is the army of the Dajjal is said to, and the Dajjal is an image, it's like cyclical, but the army of the Dajjal is not human. They can see with one eye what's in front of them. With the other eye, they can see everything. Well, these things are going to be connected to the Internet of all things. And they have a flat surface face, not a real face. I was talking about this stuff 2.5, 3 years ago when I first put these podcasts out.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to say is there's a difference. You got Lenin and Stalin. They did it with hammers and bullets, tanks, bullets, and hammers in their own country to the tune of several 100 million people. In our case, they figured out that Americans are not going to go along with that, so they're going to slow play it. But it's still going to be the same results: digital ID, digital currency, probably really god awful, like facial recognition and things like that. By the way, folks, if you don't wear glasses, or even if you do, you can get glasses. You can either get the ones that go over your glasses or the ones that are sunglasses themselves that will prevent facial recognition from being able to see you. Now, how long you'll be able to get by with that before you end up being arrested depends on how fast they initiate these things. But you can buy them, and there are also shirts that do the same thing.
I mean, do we really think because Trump's in office, the censorship and the surveillance state and the growing police state is going to all of a sudden stop? No, it may shift, it may undergo under the guise of something else, but it will still be there, and it will still be ever growing. And you mentioned this Ahrimanic technology, and we can see the progression of this. They used to use celebrities and movies and the nightly news to spread the propaganda and misinformation. Well, now we have social media, and people are voluntarily subscribing to things that are just feeding bullshit in their mind. And not only that, the truth community and the conspiracy community has been infiltrated to a point to where it's almost impossible to get good information from 80 to 90% of the content creators that are putting things out there, because they're regurgitating and repeating misinformation that has been flooded.
Exactly.
It's getting crazy. It's like the Wild West, man.
Well, for me, I have always said that Elon Musk buying Twitter was a honeypot.
Yes.
Because what they did is they opened it up. They opened it up so that you could put anything that you wanted to on there to a point. But at the same time, by doing so, it has a system. It knows everybody who posts things there. It knows what you agree with, disagree with. And you was talking about social media. We call it siloing. But social media is god awful. And I'll give you a very good example. 4 of us were standing together, and I said, "Okay, here's the post that I'm looking at." Okay, and I sent them the link to their text messages. They pulled up the same link I had. Do you know all 4 of us had different comments that were featured on our feeds? Right. There was my comments pretty much fed my ideology, which is independent, completely out of the box thinking. And it was just, kind of like, this was interesting. One of them it fed right into his mentality. This is absolutely wrong. This is horrible. This is terrible. Right. And then another one, even though he's on the other side of the fence, his was saying, "Oh yeah, this is absolutely fantastic. This is exactly what we need." That's what they were seeing. And I showed them how all of us got a completely different set of featured comments. And we don't even know if those comments are real anymore.
How advanced do you think these algorithms are and the artificial intelligence that we're interacting with? I saw a conversation with one of these Tesla robots that you were just talking about, and it was terrifying, the level of interaction that these things have on the surface, just what they're showing us. I know that technology that is being used in these military industrial sectors, 3-letter agencies, private sectors, are way ahead of anything that they're ever going to show us. How advanced you think it is we're dealing with?
I think the algorithms themselves are extremely advanced. You know, you think about being able to silo somebody like me. Folks, I tell you what I do. I use YouTube a lot, unfortunately. And what I do is I literally download playlists that are just way off base, like cartoons and learning your alphabet and, you know, it's just anything I can that doesn't fit with my normal. So if you look at my playlists on my YouTube channel, it is really strange. But I do that because it takes the algorithms and it just sends them into a frenzy. They got no idea what to do with it. And you really need to think about that, you know. When you comment on Facebook, Broadbook, or on Twix, or any site that you use, Instagram, when you make a comment, you're being siloed. It's saying, oh, he's in favor of this, or she's in favor of that, or she's against this, or she doesn't like it, or he doesn't like it. And it's siloing you so that you see comments that agree with your opinion. I very rarely make comments. I might like something, which is just as bad, but I'm trying to support friends, you know?
After 2020, 2021, I had real hope for humanity that we're starting to come together, that people were starting to become aware and their consciousness was becoming evolved. But now I'm just really paying attention to people and looking at some of the things that are coming out. And that hope is quickly diminishing, although I'm never going to give up hope on humanity. But there's just so many people out there who just don't want to know, who just want to be immersed in the nonsense and still be part of the problem and not even be aware of it. I mentioned the RFK and Trump's cabinet, and we have people on the far left who are making videos saying that they're going to add their own fluoride to the water because they don't trust RFK. You even have state senators and representatives in certain states talking about they're going to put their own fluoride in the water system because they think RFK is a quote-unquote conspiracy theorist. And I don't trust the man either, but that's just the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, folks, to give you a very good example, fluoride doesn't naturally exist in the form that it's added to your water. Fluoride is a byproduct of the aluminum industry. It is a waste product that is toxic to the ground, toxic to plants, toxic to animals. It's got skull and crossbones on it. And the aluminum industry at the time, because they were making sheets for aircraft, needed a place to get rid of this fluoride. Well, they figured out if they could sell it, so then it would be disposed of for them and they wouldn't have to worry about the toxic cleanup. So they convinced people that fluoride was good for you. And the fact of the matter is fluoride is toxic. It's cancer causing. There are all kinds. It doesn't help your teeth or your bones at all. As a matter of fact, it diminishes them over time. So it is a toxic substance that is a byproduct of aluminum production, which, by the way, folks, aluminum is not a natural metal. This is the reason why it's lethal to humans. So they put it in the water supply. Now, my thing is they could enforce states' rights. So if the feds say no more fluoride, the state could come in with their own legislatures. California is probably 100% sure to do it. But the state could literally come in and say, no, we're going to fluoridate our water. We don't care about the feds. And that's states' rights. But there is one other thing that you have. You have what they call fundamental rights, which are your community rights. At the base level, you could go to your city council and say, we want this shit out of our water. And you could overrule the state because the state has rights that are not afforded to individual people, just like the federal government has rights that are not specifically, unless specifically stated by the states, the feds don't have that right. It's the same thing with the state. Unless specifically given to them by the people, they don't have the right. But people forget this. Now, what you were saying about people being unable to see or recognize, one of my first podcasts was called TV Programming. And I did it for a reason, because I wanted to talk about the mesmerism, the hypnotism, the MK Ultra that television is. And I explained how television is by design a hypnotic tool. It's a brainwashing tool. When the digital boxes first came out way back in the 80s, the cable boxes were issued. Before that, folks, it was just a cable that hooked to your TV. when the cable boxes came out, first of all, they put out their own frequency. They had a frequency that they filled your house with. And when those things hit, the cable boxes and the satellite boxes hit your homes, viewership of television went up like 80%. And the number of hours television was watched went up like, I think it was like 1,300%. Okay. And it got worse over time. But immediately it went up within the first 6 months of those cable boxes being reissued. The original ones were push buttons. They had no digitizing to them. They had no frequency that they put out. It was the infrared ones.
Yeah.
By the way, those infrared things can scan your home too, by the way. But anyway, the whole point is that when they digitized the cable boxes, viewership went up, length of time people sit in front of the TV went up, and people's inability to fight off that programming went down. Now we have digital television that operates at 72 hertz, which is the same frequency that your brain operates at. And if you got 144 hertz, you're getting a double wave. It's by design. So the first one I did was called TV programming. And then as a tribute to my friend Cliff High, I did one that's called brainwashing and frequency woo. Between the two of them, they explain to you how TV makes it so people cannot see. I said numerous times that I could take a stack of papers as high as the Trump Tower and as big as Manhattan Island and put it in front of somebody that is evidence that shows what they believe to be absolutely untrue, and they would not be able to see it. And it's because of the brainwashing. I call them brainwashed zombie TV addicts because they really are. They're addicted to the television. They have Stockholm syndrome. They are given a rush there, then they are put down, then they are given a rush, and then they're scared and made anxious, and then they're given a rush. And it is literally MK Ultra at its best.
While we're on the subject of MK Ultra and mind control, I have reason to suspect, based on the many, many guests, even guests I've had recently, that have discussed their experiences of being a targeted individual. There's so much of their stories, many of these, that can't be verified, and some of it seems so fantastic and unbelievable that it's hard to believe that it could be really happening in reality. But there's more and more people that I've been talking to that it seems like they may have been involved with projects from a very young age. I talked with someone about the Gifted and Talented program and some of the nefarious things that can go on behind that, and individuals that have been surveyed their whole lives, people coming in and out of their lives, guiding them in certain directions. But not only that, we have this technology, we have so many kids hooked on pharmaceutical drugs, and I wonder how easy it is to program these people to do things that they wouldn't normally do. We'll just leave it at that.
I figure it's very, very easy. And well, you think about it, we got a whole generation, and I pointed this out in one of my podcasts, recent podcasts. We got a whole generation that was put on ADHD drugs and other things, right? Reuptake inhibitors and things like that. Well, now you have somebody who is basically kept unconscious anyway. And then you put them in front of a television with all this stuff spewing at them all day long, plus whatever else they're exposed to, whether it be, lyrics in music or videos or whatever. So we have a whole generation now. I say a whole generation for basically the last 25 to 30 years that have been completely, excuse my language, y'all, they have been completely mind effed. And from the time that they were little, most of your problems with hyperactivity is just the fact that they've eliminated playground time from kids. When we were in school back in the 70s, we had 15 minutes in the morning. Then we had 35 minutes in the dinner time. And then we had 15 minutes in the afternoon just to burn off steam. So we weren't, going apeshit crazy in the classroom. Well, now they're complaining because the kids are just too hyperactive in the classroom.
Well, they're giving them speed at the youngest of ages. They give them any types of pharmaceutical as a Band-Aid to fix whatever behavioral problems they have because their parents don't know how to take care of them to begin with.
Yes. Well, and that leads that pharmaceuticals, I pointed out in my podcast, they have been pharmaceutically neutered
Hmm.
mentally. So it makes it very easy for whatever they see on TV or whatever they hear. Very good example is, and I don't take sides, you all. I couldn't care one way or the other. But when you look at Trump derangement syndrome,
Yeah.
that is specifically
Hmm.
brainwashing from watching people who are telling them lies. Don't get me wrong. I don't like Trump for a lot of reasons. A lot of reasons. But at the same time, a lot of what people refer to him as is completely untrue. A very good example is the abortion
Yeah.
issue. Trump was 100% right about the abortion issue. That is not a federal. That has nothing to do with Washington D.C. That's a states' rights
Yeah.
issue. And people are all screaming because he threw it back to the states, which is where it should have been in the first
Right.
place under our Constitution, because that is one of those things that was not specifically given to the federal government. And people who do not understand how that works are all up in arms. But there are many, many things that the federal government has taken that they do not have the right to control. Good example is Homeland Security Agency. Another good example is FEMA.
Hmm.
They have no right under the Constitution and under the authorities of the state to do what they
Yeah.
do. Yet people won't demand that those rights be brought back to the states. The only time that this country was ever supposed to be federalized was when it was a national issue,
Right.
not anything that involves states or regional, like counties. Those are for them to deal with. The state doesn't even have power when it comes to those
Hmm.
things. But we have federalized all this stuff that constitutionally is illegal for them to even talk about.
We've just been programmed
um,
to fight over and worry about anything except
exactly.
taking care of our own shit, which we'll get to
Ourselves.
later. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and folks, something that I brought up with Chris that he hadn't seen, and I need to point out to you all is it is 100% true. Now they're trying to spin this in different ways on the media, but all the stuff that I did for 18 and a half years, I worked at atomic, biological, and chemical. Um, I never once in my life ever thought that I would see a intermediary ballistic missile used in combat, let alone a multiple head intermediate ballistic missile. Um,
Now, when
the
was this? What was the
Russians,
circumstances?
well, last weekend, the United States and England launched ATACMS, 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 and I'm trying to remember what the other ones are called from England, but they're just basically the same thing: long range missiles into
Mm.
Russia. Now, the fact is there's no way Ukraine could have done it because those two missile systems and the one that the French have are controlled by the nation's satellites and their intelligence community. So the ATACMs had to have been fired by American personnel under American orders. Okay, that's the first thing people need to understand. The same thing with the British, whatever the hell them things are called, and now the French have done it yesterday.
Mm.
French missiles, they were shot into part of Crimea yesterday. There is no way that the Ukrainians could fire those or even do the telemetry on them. So it had to be done by the United States, England, and France. Well, in response to that, because there's a manufacturing facility in Ukraine that manufactures different parts for rockets, the Soviets have created a hypersonic uh, intermediary ballistic missile, which means it's short range.
Mm.
Short range being about 3,000 kilometers, you all. Literally, this thing can hit anywhere in Europe. But anyway, they shot it. There were six of them that were shot, and each one of them had six warheads. And it wasn't nuclear payload; it was just a conventional payload. But it travels at Mach 10, you all. So just uh, a weighted munition wouldn't have to have an explosive to it at all. Just a weighted munition like rods of God. If they loaded them things with rods of God at that speed and they hit the ground, it would just pulverize anything underneath it.
Mm.
Um, and you can't stop it. It's Mach 10. There's nothing that we got would even come close to stopping it. But I want to point out to you all, in my lifetime, I never thought I would see a intermediary ballistic missile ever fired.
Mm.
And we have just seen one country forced through the actions of other nations, forced to take out that plant. And they used one thing that would not be stopped in order to do it. So, you know, this acceleration, see, and here's the thing, we've got a lame duck president being run by the West Exec group. Folks, if you don't know who West Exec is, that's where Blinken and the rest of these guys come from.
Right.
You need to find out who's financing. I'm not going to go into it, but you need to find out who West Exec is, because when Biden moved into the White House, West Exec moved in with him. So if you find out who's financing West Exec, you'll know who's making the decisions for Biden. But the whole point is we actually saw a intermediary ballistic missile used in combat. First time in my lifetime, y'all.
You know, before we move out of the realm of what's happening with politics and the insanity with society, do you have any thoughts or predictions about what we may expect in the upcoming years?
Oh, dude. You know, you have to be old enough, or you have to be researched enough to understand Kissinger and Brzezinski and Rockefeller and Rothschilds. If you don't understand those core individuals and groups that have been directing this stuff for 50 plus years at this point, and some of them, you know, for 100 years, if you don't understand where they were at and what they were saying 100 years ago, then you don't see. It doesn't matter who's president. It doesn't matter who's at war. It doesn't matter. You know, world wars didn't make any difference. The world wars were just a means to an end. The first one created the League of Nations. The second one created the United Nations. It was on purpose. You know, people don't realize that during World War I and World War II, those were all cousins fighting each other. Somebody said, "Oh, it was a power struggle." No, it wasn't. They were still talking. The leaders were still talking while they were had the soldiers out there killing each other. So what I see is a continuation. As long as people keep putting this energy into it and keep this division thing going, I see the continuation of the same process. More control, more control, more control, moving towards that global totalitarian corporatist state. That's what they want. You know, you can look at mercantilism if you want to. It's the same idea, the same concept, but they want a global totalitarian state that is corporativist. That means that you cannot separate the corporations like Pfizer or the military industrial complex from the state itself. And if you look at Elon Musk, he's a very good example of a corporativist. X and Twex would not exist if the state did not allow it.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Elon Musk and his role in everything?
Well, you know, he talks a good game. What you have to, I don't say, you don't listen to people's words. You look at what they actually do. Okay. I don't care who it is. You look at what they actually do. And what is Musk doing? He is moving right into that aramonic stage that I talked about a few years ago. I mean, at a massive speed. And he's being financed by the state to do it. You know, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that this is exactly what we're looking at. You know, we talked about the flat face masks. Yeah. You know, the Dajjal has an army that can see with one eye. The other eye can see everything. Well, these robots have access to the Internet of Things. They're going to know everything that they need to know immediately if it's accessible from the Internet, while they're looking at you with their camera lens.
Well, it definitely seems like we might have to be more worried about the robotic invasion than the coming alien invasion. They're rolling this out so slowly. Although we just had another hearing, and I know you paid a little bit of attention to it, as have I, not really that much at all, but it's the same players, the same clowns, spouting the same things over and over again with no evidence.
It's called theater of distraction. Yeah. They want you to think that the Senate is doing something to address your concerns, but what they're actually doing is trying to create anxiety in you. Because you go back and you talk to the original people within the UFO communities, like Adamski. There's a couple of them in Europe. You talk to these individuals. I've done interviews with Glenn Steckling, who runs the Adamski estate. Folks, anything that they said about UFOs and visitors was positive, not harmful, not violent. They want you looking up at violence rather than looking at the people in your own communities and your own government. That's what they're doing. And this Lou Alessandro, or whatever his name is,
Alessandro, yeah.
I got no idea what this dude's name is. I got no idea what his name is, because every time I see him, I just disregard him. He's a CIA operative. The first operation didn't work with, what was it, with Star something or other? Star Academy?
Yeah, to the Stars Academy.
Well, that didn't work with all the faces that they had. So they're bringing him out now, and he's upset that they had lied to him. Come on, y'all. He's CIA. You just give it up. And Senate hearings are what they are, y'all. It's in the long con. When you're running a con on somebody, you can go back and look at some of these old movies. But when they're running a long con on somebody, they always have this point where they have to cool the mark. Good example I like to use is Oliver North with the Iran-Contra deal. They were sending weapons to Iran and drug money and drugs out of the South America. They brought Ollie North in because he was a colonel. He was part of the strategic operations group that were running that Gladio program. They brought him in front of the Senate, and they just read him the riot act. Oh, you did terrible, awful. And, they did everything but cuss him out, right? They read him the riot act, and they undressed him and dressed him and redressed him. And he was the fall guy. And everybody in this country said, oh, they did their job. When in fact, all they did was got one person up there who had some brass on him, and looked like the military guy. And he really was, Colonel North. But here's the thing. That's called cooling the mark. Mm-hmm. When he got done with those hearings, he had to leave the military. He did. He went to $1 million a year job. Right. Okay. But everybody in the country's like, oh, they did something about it. When in fact, it just continued. And that's what they do with the Senate and the congressional hearings. It's called cooling the mark. When the people in the United States get upset about something, and they know they're upset about it, they have a hearing. They'll get somebody right in front of them, and they'll dress them down really good. And, oh, don't you do that again. And then everybody in the country just lets it go. And that's called cooling the mark. It's a long con. That should tell you something about what the Senate and the Congress actually is. They are running a con job. They call it Congress. They're running a con job on the population of the United States, and they have been since 1913 when they put the Federal Reserve.
Well, let's look at Lou Elizondo critically just for a second. The man spent how much of his life not only in intelligence, he was a counterintelligence officer. So meaning operative. Yes. So meaning he is there to spread misinformation and to confuse the situation. Yep. And that's his job. Yes. That's his primary job. And I'm sure if you just do a couple of Google searches or on YouTube, you will be able to find the interview where he stated in the interview he is currently still doing counterintelligence within the UFO community. What is that supposed to mean?
Yes, exactly. And, people completely ignore it. That's what I don't get. He says, I am still doing counterintelligence operations within the UFO community. Well, what would that be? That would be spreading information that's not accurate in order to muddy the situation.
Yeah. The definition of insanity, we keep trusting these swamp people, these military families, these military industrial pigs that continue to deceive us and give us information that leads us in the wrong direction and use whatever technology they have to propel wars and gain more power, and that's what it's always been about. But they present it to us like they're doing us some kind of favor by disclosing extraterrestrials.
You know, well, yeah, but extraterrestrials could be a lot of things. I mean, people don't, everybody wants to think that they're from Venus or Mars or some other galaxy or whatever. But extraterrestrial is a very, 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 very definite word. When you say extra, that means other than or outside of, and terrestrial means what is known. Okay, so what is known to us, the 7 continents that we live on, right? So extraterrestrial could be continents that we don't know nothing about. It could be inner Earth. It could be outside the rings. It could be underwater.
Yeah.
There's a whole ocean underneath the crust of the Earth.
I think that there's a much broader ecosystem of life beyond our perception as well.
Years ago, you and I had a conversation, and I brought up the submarine that looked like a giant fish that came to shore in South America. Yeah. And the people that came out of it had to wear pressure suits to be outside of the ship. Right. Now, what if you lived at the bottom of the ocean or inside the lower ocean where there's actually open spaces? It's not all water, which is really which is really cool to me. When they did the scan, they realized that there's more water under the crust than over it. And then there's empty spaces down there that the water doesn't fill. Now, if you lived at that kind of pressure, and then you came to the surface to help rebuild after a catastrophe, this is after the jaguar had swallowed the sun and spit it back out again. They came to the surface and it looked like a giant fish, and they tried to throw spears at it and they just bounced off. And then these people came out wearing these like pressure suits, and they got pictures of them on the glyphs down there in South America showing what they were wearing. If you lived at a high pressure area and then you came to the surface, you would need something to maintain, just like we do when we go down. I still adhere to the likelihood that what we're talking about with extraterrestrial is inner Earth, not outer space.
Yeah, and people always say,
or interdimensional, right. Interdimensional, even, because we are. You and I've talked about this too. We are locked into a very finite, extremely finite visual, hearing, and auditory space. There could be somebody standing right next to me that's vibrating at just a slight frequency above or below me, and I wouldn't even be able to see him.
That's another thing that
and that's the
we
whole
need
point.
to take into consideration with a lot of crossover paranormal activities, cryptids, Bigfoots, dogmen, is what you just said. We have limited perception with the spectrum of vision that we have, but also we compare things to as we do things, as we would act if we were those creatures. But they probably have a completely different perspective on reality, a different understanding of how to be evasive from the dirty humans, or how to not be seen, or even like we were saying, maybe they know how to shift to just a different vibratory state to where they just look like they're blending in with the background, which seems to be happening a lot with Bigfoot cases.
It goes back to the simulation theory. And I call it the holographic humanarium. We are locked into an electromagnetic frequency at a very specific vibration, at a very specific energy level, which is electromagnetic within a very limited visual spectrum. That is how holograms work. Yeah. If you had a means to change your vibration, energy, frequency, vibration, that's the reason why Tesla talked about it so much. If you could change your energy, frequency, or vibration just slightly, you're not in the same space. Think about meditation. When you meditate, you end up in a completely different space. You don't hear things, you don't see things, either that or you become even more aware of things. There is a reason why energy, frequency, and vibration is the equation. So if we have something, a very good example is Bigfoot. I like to use that example because everybody's familiar with it. Sasquatch, Sabe. If they're walking past you and you happen to notice them and all of a sudden they vanish, it could be nothing more or less than a meditative state that makes them invisible to you, because you can't do that. And the same thing with these craft that we see. Like, boy, I'll tell you what, these here lately, the cylinders are being seen everywhere
Right.
again. It's like, are they projections or are they real? Well, there's a couple of pilots that ran into one over the Pacific that freaked them out because it was like 100 feet off their wing and parallel them. And that would freak me out. I'm flying a 747 and I've got a tube that's glowing 100 feet off my wing. But apparently something's going on because those are the ones, the Tic Tacs and those cylinders are the ones that showed up during World War II.
Well, you mentioned that they're painting the UFO narrative as some sort of threat. I used to think that the most obvious and logical reason they'd be rolling out this disclosure narrative is so that they could also roll out new weapons, advanced exotic technology. That may or probably is part of it, but they're going to roll out whatever technology they want whenever they want. Anyway, they can put any narrative behind it. So could it be that they have knowledge of something and they're trying to get ahead of something, or they're painting it as a threat because so many of the conspiracies we've heard lately, Project Bluebeam, fake invasion, or something that we're not even touching on yet? Who knows?
Well, for years now, I don't know about you, but for years, I'm sure you do. You got the TR-3B. You got the X-38s, which are a smaller version of the space shuttles. That one was up for like 385 days. We've got the X-41 Phantoms and the X-48s, which nobody has seen pictures of yet. These are, the X-41 and the X-48s are unmanned. But they look like something out of Battlestar Galactica. Now, here's my question. If we have that technology available, why aren't we using it? I need to point this out. Yes, we have seen something that looks like these things. We have seen pictures. We have actually seen a few of them in flight. Right. Okay. But there is there's that second hand thing. Look at this hand, but don't look at this one. And if these things are available, if you had a TR-3B that could fly through the clouds and use a laser beam to shoot lightning down, wouldn't you use it?
Right.
If you had a X-41 Phantom, the Navy actually had them functional, wouldn't you use it? It's supposed to be hypersonic. It's supposed to be faster than human reactions, and it's supposed to be evasive of radar and missile technology. Would you not put that thing in the air?
Well, you're right. We have witnessed a lot of exotic technology that most likely came from our own military, but I also have to wonder how much we're really implementing a lot of this technology in conflicts, in wars, in different operations.
It looks good. It looks good. It looks really good, really scary. But if it was as scary as they want you to think it is, why the hell aren't they using it?
Well, I have a thought. It's an interesting theory that even what we're shown to be unfolding in a lot of global conflicts and wars may be heavily scripted and theatrical, in a sense that what we're being shown is not what's really unfolding in these countries. Yes, there may be battles, there may be death, there may be conflict, but it may be glamorized and beefed up to where the populace believes a certain narrative about it. And why wouldn't they? This is what propaganda 101 is. This is what we've been doing throughout every war. The numbers are inflated. It's dramatized. The scenes we see coming out of the battlefield itself seem to be, in a sense, overly dramatic and overly theatrical at times.
Folks, I have to emphasize this since he's bringing it up. We have footage out of Afghanistan, them people riding the balloon C-130. That was a balloon. It had no engines, no windows, nothing. They're sitting on it. It's supposed to be moving down the runway using its engines, and the guy is sitting on the wheel housing. That's not going to happen. That was just a parade with a giant float that, they call them, there's a word for it, but anyway, it's false equipment that they put on the runway to distract enemy troops, but it's a giant balloon is what it was. And then people had cell phones. They're supposed to be in Afghanistan, and they got iPhones and stuff. And if you look at their shoes, folks, none of that was real. And then you had that march coming through Mexico that was supposed to be all these people invading, and they're wearing flip-flops.
Right. And we're not saying that these battles aren't taking places. I know that PTSD is real. I know troops come home traumatized. But yes, like you said, there is exaggerations.
And then we have this other thing. I don't know how many people are familiar with 1984, and people get sick of me bringing this up. But you have to remember, in 1984, the speakers and the television were showing people the war between the East and the West. And it was all script. Yes, they would set off an explosion occasionally to scare people. Right. But the thing about it is it was all scripted. It was Big Brother showing you what they wanted you to see. And that's where we've been.
This also begs the question of how much coordination is there amongst all sides when it comes to global conflicts? Could it be that there's an agreement at the highest levels to where we'll have this much bloodshed versus this much theater to elicit this emotional response?
World War I and World War II was a war between cousins. None of the cousins themselves were killed. They say, well, the Chancellor, the Duke, was killed. Well, no. The Duke was seen in South America after he was supposedly assassinated, y'all. So you tell me. Yeah. But anyway, World War I and World War II was fought between relatives by the people that they were ruling over. And yes, it was bloody, it was horrific, and it led to the atrocities after the war in Dresden and the literal starvation and murder of hundreds of thousands of German troops. But it was an ends to a means, or a means to an ends. They wanted the global government to be, we ended up with the League of Nations gone and the United Nations established. And then, through the 50s, NATO, the first leaders of NATO were Nazis. The Secretary Generals of NATO were Nazis. Yeah. Same thing with the Secretary of the United Nations was a Nazi officer. Come on, y'all.
This is why I have to pay attention to my spidey senses when I see all the global leaders jumping behind Trump all of a sudden right now.
That is not right. Yeah, something is wrong. Yeah. No matter how you look at it, something is wrong with that picture. Now, all that being said, because Chris only has a limited amount of time, and I want to get to this part. Folks, I don't invest energy in any of this. Right. All right. I observe it. I observe it from outside. I'm like a casual observer. Do I like what's going on? No. Do I like what they're saying? No. Do I like what I'm seeing? Hell no. I'll go back to what I said about the intermediate ballistic missile. No. But you have to be aware of those things without investing energy into it. Just be aware of it on the periphery. I have released 9 laugh podcasts in the last few weeks. That's where my energy's going. I don't have time to invest energy in all this hate and division and baiting and counterintelligence and counter information. I got no time for that. I want people to be able to laugh. I've put out, like I said, I put out 8 or 9. I recorded 2 more for December. Invest your energy at home. Invest your energy in yourself. You got family. You got family at home. Those are the people you need to worry about. You don't need to worry about Trump and Biden and all this other shit. Because the fact of the matter is if they decide that they want to have an intercontinental nuclear war, they're going to.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with what you can or can't do about it. If they decide that they want to drop nukes, they're going to. Your job is to have yourself prepared, have your family prepared, whatever preparations. But spend time with your kids. Have a nice dinner. Listen to some good music. Listen to some comedy, I don't make any money off my comedy podcast, by the way, y'all. And mine are from PG-13 all the way up to, holy crap, he actually said that, adult comedy. Okay. And you can't miss them because one's called Just Plain Ornery, and I spelled it wrong on purpose, you all, so I could copyright it. By the way, that's the only way I could copyright it is if I spelled ornery wrong. But it's copyrighted and protected. I got the right to protect my stuff. And then I've got the stunt kids and all the other crap that, I say crap. I got all the other stuff that is like PG-13. I do this on purpose because Chris and I spend so much time on the deep, tough, rough, oh my God, subjects that you would have a mental breakdown if that's all you did.
Well, yeah, this is the perfect way to end it because this is the way I really enjoy ending most of my shows is offering solutions. And the biggest solution is the one thing that most people aren't discussing, and that's taking care of yourself, taking care of your family, getting your own house in order. And like you said, the energy we put out there is going to affect our reality. Our perception is going to have a huge effect on our reality. And I believe that our energy, our imagination, and our perception is a fuel that forms our reality in a sense.
Well, it creates an egregore, okay? Literally, if you keep investing energy into this conflict and this hate and this division, you are literally creating an egregore. It is creating a life of its own from your energy. Why would you want to give it that? I've got a nostalgia playlist on my YouTube channel, and it is all kinds of music from the 1950s, big band, Dean Martin, all the way up through, like Nickelback and AC/DC and Motorhead. It's just like a lifetime's worth of music for me. And the reason why I created that playlist is because you can go through that playlist, and if you got any age on you at all or any roundness to your musical tastes, you're gonna these songs bring back good memories and bad. You and I had talked about residue and residuals. We all have residue in our lives, and we have residuals. Now, here's the thing: if it's residue, that means it's dirty, it's nasty. You got to clean it up, and then it becomes a residual that you can build off of positively. But a lot of times that requires that you acknowledge something, right? I talked to somebody who had been molested as a kid, and it keeps blaming all his problems are because of what happened to him when he was 10, 11 years old. I'm like, you can't do that. What do you mean? I said, you could hate everybody in the world for what happened to you at 10, or you could say, I'm never going to let this shit happen again, and I'm going to affect somebody's life positively. And we have to be that place. It doesn't matter what, folks. I have seen things in my lifetime that are horrifying. I mean, I just went and did search and rescue here in North Carolina that ended up being a lot of search and recovery. I have seen one of the planes of Chinese hell recently. That could leave a residue on me, or I could use it as a residual to do something positive. Hence so many comedy podcasts that I've done over the last few weeks. You have to affect a positive outcome for your own life, your own family, your own work situation. Because if you do that, if you invest your energy locally, then what they're trying to do globally has to change.
Right. Yes, everything that is unfolding, I look back at how everything has rolled out until now, and it does seem like there is this greater force, maybe the collective consciousness at play, that is being presented these polarities through these insane situations, and we are deciding individually whether we want to align with darkness or align with light, but that also creates this 100th monkey effect that others will be forced to make this choice as well. And it seems like the more insane the world gets, the choices become clearer. Okay, we obviously don't want to go this way because this is Clown Town to the nth degree, so we're going to back it up and we're going to align more towards this. And this seems to be happening based on the level of insanity we're presented lately.
Yeah, well, you got a choice. You can be a nihilist or a humanist. I mean, that's the choices that we're being given. Now, if you want to be a nihilist, it doesn't matter which side of the fence you vote on. Look at their policies. It's nihilism.
Yeah. 100%.
I mean, flat out. It's pure nihilism. It's Malthusian anti-humanism, if you really want to get into it. But it's nihilism at its core. So you can either be a nihilist, which eventually results in your own annihilation, by the way, or you can be a humanist.
Yeah.
A humanist is trying to do what's best for humanity overall. Yeah. Well, back to what I said, it starts at home. It starts with you. There's a song that I really like. It says, everybody wants salvation, but nobody wants to be saved.
Yeah. That's it.
Well, they don't want to do the work. Yeah. They don't want to do the work.
And I know I said earlier that I see a lot of people who are refusing to become aware and complacent with everything. But I do also see a lot of people that are doing the work, that are growing in their awareness and participating in things that align with humanity and not the Matrix. So I do see a lot of good unfolding. And Raven, thank you so much again. This was fantastic. Before we close out,
I love our conversation.
Yeah, dude, it's always great, always weird and wonderful. So before you go, remind the audience how they can find all your content.
All right, folks, there's 3 ways to find me because it's the 3 main podcasts. Just type in Raven Keefer in any of your podcasts. I'm on Podbean, Podcast Addict. I got 3 iHeart channels now. I don't know how. Anyway, so just type in Raven Keefer and you'll find me. I've got the Laugh podcasts. I've got interviews. And then I have No Apologies, Enough Said, which is just me with my presentations. If you type my name into any of the podcasts repeater sites you like to listen to, you should be able to find me. And they're free. Yeah. I haven't monetized anything ever. And the comedy, it's like over 240 hours of comedy. And like I said, from PG-13 to, oh my God, he actually said that. Laugh a little, y'all.
Yes.
Laugh a little. We need it.
Definitely. I agree 1,000%.
And if not me, try, Jeff Dunham, try, whoever you like to laugh at, because that's what we really need.
100%, man. Raven, thank you so much. Fantastic. And we will definitely do it again as usual.
Absolutely.
And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We'll talk again tomorrow. See you then.